Have you ever been standing in an ordinary place? A supermarket aisle, a train platform, your own kitchen, and a sentence drops into you like a stone. I am going to die. Not dramatic, not poetic, just the cold adult contact where you suddenly feel time in your bones. Your throat tightens, your mouth dries. The room stays the same, but the world looks thinner. And everything you were chasing can start to look like cardboard. Plans, achievements, praise, even healing. Because the question underneath is brutal. What is the point if all of it disappears? There is one part of you which wants to sprint, doing more, building more, fixing more, proving more, as if speed could outrun the eternal truth. And another part of you wants to collapse inward, because if it ends, why am I carrying all of the weight? Why try if the sand swallows every single footprint? And so you oscillate. Running one day like your to-do list is a life raft, like it's Noah's Ark. Staring at the ceiling the next day, like you've been sentenced to, a universe that eats everything and leaves nothing. That split is the suffering, not death itself. The split. Once you look at time honestly, you see the end of all things. Names fade, buildings crumble, cities turn to dust. Even the great archives, the ledgers, the libraries, the histories we worship, eventually everything vanishes into nothingness. And the mind does what the mind does. It turns that truth into a weapon. If nothing lasts, nothing matters. If no one will remember, why be good? If the planet itself will crumble and fade, why build anything at all? This is the first lie nihilism tells. Not that you will die, but that your actions are therefore meaningless. So naturally, the modern man runs. He runs towards productivity. He runs towards pleasure. He runs towards improvement. He runs towards new identities, new labels, new masks, new systems. He runs towards distractions that can hold his attention long enough for the question to go quiet. And for a while, it works. The dread lowers. The mind gets busy, but the question doesn't leave. It waits like undertow, because nothing external can satisfy a question that is cosmic and existential. You can decorate the entrance all you want, but the labyrinth is still there. At some point, you reach for what humans have always reached for. Not as theory, as a rope to hold on to. Karma. Actions have consequences beyond what can be measured today. And dharma. There is a right orientation, a way of walking that is truer than comfort. And a deeper intuition that life is not random, even when it feels utterly brutal, that something in existence registers the quality of a man's being, even if the world forgets his name. In my own work, I wrote it plainly. The descent is not a punishment. It is a curriculum. not because you are chosen, because you are alive. But here's the line we cannot cross. Don't use the unseen to escape the seen. Use the unseen to carry the seen with more dignity, with more nobility. For those who have been there, they know that even faith doesn't erase the ache. You can speak of karma and still feel the grief of impermanence. You can believe in dharma and still wake up with dread in your ribs. You can say temporary pain and still want to scream when the weight lands in the depth of your heart. This is where men start to perform spiritually. They talk cleanly while bleeding privately. They quote wisdom while their nervous system is on fire. But the underworld doesn't respect performance. It respects and demands truth. So say it plainly. I am afraid. I am tired. I don't understand why this has to hurt. A prayer does not have to be polite to be sincere. This is the part that the modern world forgets, but the ancient world knew all too well. You did not invent this question. You inherited it, not as a belief, but as blood. Your ancestors stood at graves with the same hollow in their chests. They watched seasons end. They watched empires fall. They watched children die and still had to rise the next morning and milk the cow, chop the wood, and carry the water. And they left you something, not motivational language, but a posture. In my work with transcendental madness, lineage matters. The rites of passage were never just personal growth. They were a handoff, a cosmic baton. A man carries his line forward either consciously, with reverence, or unconsciously, with repetition. So when mortality hits you, part of what you feel is your own life, and part of what you feel is the old human grief returning through your nervous system, asking to be metabolized and digested in this generation. There is an underworld here too. The nihilistic pit where you want to say, why should I try? Why should I care? It all ends. This is not weakness. It is the mind reaching the edge of its own control and logic. And in my lived descent, the edge never arrived in a lecture hall. It arrived in rooms that were too real. Temples, prisons, asylums, lonely streets. It arrived when I had no clean story left to tell myself. The underworld doesn't ask you to understand. It asks you to stop lying. Because the question isn't only what is the point? The question is, what does a man become when he stops living like his actions matter? You can feel the answer in the body. It's the restlessness, the low-grade dread, a hunger nothing feeds, a life that looks fine and feels utterly false. And sometimes the mind goes even further. It thinks about disappearing, not always as a plan, as an urge for release, for silence, for the end of carrying the weight of oneself. If that is where you are, do not carry it alone. Get a real hand in the real world, a friend, a professional, a family member, someone who can stay with you during this process. Not because you're broken, because this is heavy and it is a lot to carry. And having said this, here is the instruction that often arrives underneath the urge, the one that sobers the soul. Escape doesn't finish the lesson. It postpones it. In my personal work with transcendental madness, the spiral is real. The themes return until they are met. You don't have to romanticize that. You just have to let that itself make you honest. So you stay. Not because you feel hopeful, but because deep down you know you cannot run from yourself forever. In older, more ancient worlds, a man was taken to the edge, not to harm him, but to reveal him. He was shown death, not as an event on a calendar, not in theory, but as a presence at his shoulder. I have met that presence in my own way, watching bodies burn at the Ghats in India, the smell of smoke and sweetness in the air, the rivers carrying ash downstream like a cosmic sentence, standing in places where the world pretends eternity is guaranteed, and seeing how quickly it is not. Sitting in confinement, a prison cell, a locked meditation camp, where time stretches and the mind has nowhere to run, and you learn what is left when there is no entertainment, no exit, no audience. That is not content, that is initiation. And the gift of initiation is not certainty, but it is orientation. Not I will live forever, but my actions matter whilst I am here right now. The meaning craved is not a conclusion one arrives at. That meaning is what you do when you don't have a conclusion. When the big cosmic thought hits, ask a smaller question that you can actually live. What is my next right action? Not what will fix my entire life. Not what will guarantee a legacy. Not what will make me remembered. Simply the next right action for today, for this moment. In my own descent, the only thing that ever saved me from total metaphysical collapse was this. One clean action. Drinking water, telling the truth, keeping the promise, leaving the room, making the call, praying without theatre, a tiny act that restored contact with my sacred center and sacred spine. This is how you stop running from death and start living, one clean action at a time. Not perfect, but clean. In the old stories, the underworld is not only a place, it is a pattern. A labyrinth you enter when the mind can no longer hold the meaning of your life. Inside the labyrinth, there is always a creature. Call it the minotaur, call it dread, call it the truth that nothing is guaranteed, but it's always there. Most men spend their lives decorating the entrance, so they never have to go in. They keep busy. They stay loud, they stay fine. But if you are asking this question, you have already stepped inside. And the task is not to kill the creature with an argument. The task is to look at it directly in the face without flinching. Because the minotaur is not your enemy. It is the guardian of seriousness. It forces you to stop living accidentally. And the way through a labyrinth is never bravado. It is in the sacred thread. In my work with transcendental madness, the thread is faith and fidelity. The one line you refuse to cross even when you are absolutely terrified and out of your depth. One decision that you can repeat. One vow you do not negotiate. One clean act when your mind is full of dust. When it comes to the soul's timeline, a human life is but a page. But it is a real page, and ink is still ink. This is why rites of passage matter. They don't make you immortal. They make you accountable. They teach you to live as though every day is an offering, not a transaction. The world might forget. History might erase all of the details. But the quality of your being, your heart, your honesty, your restraint, your courage, that changes you, and not just here, at a much larger level. And that change is always carried forward, not as a badge, but as substance. And maybe this is what ancestors really means. Not dead relatives somewhere up in the clouds, but the living chain of character. You are either strengthening or weakening with every decision you make whilst you are here. So if you are so blessed that death is close in your mind, let it refine you. Let it strip what is false. Let it pull out all performance. Do not postpone your life waiting for certainty. Do not numb yourself because the world is temporary. When this video ends, do one simple thing. Write down one area where you are living as if your actions don't matter. Pick one. Then choose one clean, visible act of alignment inside of that. Not to be remembered, only to be real. And if grief rises after that, let it come in all of its glory. A man who can grieve is a man who can love. And a man who can love is a man who can serve. And service, offered cleanly with humility, is how the soul makes peace with impermanence.